Hello and thanks for joining us on the Wednesday edition of Journalist Hangout. I am Kemi Fola Adeyemo. Today on the show, Nigeria's Inspector General of Police sets up special weapons and tactical team to replace the defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Direct personnel of defunct unit to report to Abuja for debriefing, psychological and medical examinations. Plus, our midweek special is on the sustained protests against police brutality against Nigeria, across Nigeria, I should say. I'm joined today by bySolomon, Ajuziogu and Sam Ibemere. Journalist Hangout starts now. From NSAS to End SWAT now, protesting Nigerians have rejected the formation of a new police unit, and that's the Special Weapons and Tactical Team, SWAT, that will replace the disbanded Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SAS. And they have returned to the streets on the 7th day, defying the rains in some states. And with the hashtag EndSWAT, the protesters vow to continue the protests. This in spite of the adoption of their 5-point demands by the Presidential Committee on Police Reforms. This is how we begin, asking what exactly do the protesters want and what will get them off the streets. I bring in the guests at this time, gentlemen, Solomon and Sam. It's good to have you both join us. Let me begin in the studio here. Solomon, so for you, defying the rain under the sun as well, despite promises by the government, what do you make of what has kept the protesters on the streets despite it all?
I think that there's more of the will to see that their demands are met. This is democracy at its finest level. First and foremost, the ability of people, or the right of people, to protest, to express themselves, their displeasure about something. It suffices it that we are not talking about end police or ban the police, which we think will not be possible, cannot be done, because even if you say that we should put aside or, disband the police in its present format, we'll still have to create a form of policing system, so you can't entirely do that. But then the Special Anti-Robbery Squad used to be a specialized unit in the police force. Don't forget, we also had the CID, Criminal Investigation Department, back then, and then we had SARS, and then we have different divisions. You have the mobile police force within the police itself, and these ones were designed to fight riots, violence and mass action and all of that. And so we've moved from all of this. Now, essentially, the police has different units within it, and they deal with different levels of crime. Some are very civil matters. The police also deal with traffic offenses here and there. They deal with very civil domestic cases in some areas, and then this is very, very serious crimes. You can't do without a unit within the police that investigate serious crimes, under whatever name you want to call it. But I think that the bigger problem first is how we recruit these people, the sort of trainings we give to them, the sort of briefs they have. I think that's a problem. But so far, what we have is that we're beginning to see some of the inactions, the response over time, some of the inactions in government. And we are also beginning to see a situation where we had doubted that Nigerian youths could carry on mass action like this. So how far could they go with this is another thing, given certain situations. But first, it's a tip of the iceberg that Nigerian youths are probably capable of drawing such attention. They have the will to make demands when things go wrong. One would have wished that they had been able to do this in very other serious matters before now. But let's see how it goes. But I think that first and foremost, we are beginning to see, because every time you hear analysis of we are sitting on a keg of gunpowder. We have so many jobless youths. We have, you know, and at the moment, many of them are also not in school, coming from the coronavirus lockdown and restrictions now to ASU and ASU strike and all of that, and many of them are at home. But first, it's an indication of the level of joblessness and unemployment in town, and the fact that many of these young people are also at home and their schools are shut. ASU is on strike. Schools cannot even resume because of the lockdown and restrictions and all of that.
To engage many of
them.
Maybe,
exactly. Maybe if that was the case, if they were in school, maybe it would have been different. But then that is just maybe,
right.
Because the schools could also be a galvanizing ground,
Absolutely.
a galvanizing point for this sort of...
like we've seen
exactly.
in the past. Sam, how do you like to begin that the youth remain unrelenting in spite of what the government has said will be the breakdown of this new group now to replace the SAS group now? So they've said the officers that will come on board will be evaluated medically and psychologically. They've said that there will be trainings across the nation, across the geopolitical zones of the nation. Police has also said it will set up a counseling police unit to involve clergy, to involve counselors that will, you know, bring out a better police officer. Yet the youth aren't impressed.
Yes, the youth aren't impressed, and we need to place this, you know, in proper context. First, we must acknowledge that what we are witnessing today is some kind of paradigm shift. You know, Nigerians and indeed the youths have always been, you know, accused of docility. But beyond what we used to know, we've seen our young men and young women insist, you know, that the right thing should be done. So beyond what's said in terms of the will to carry on, I think that what we are witnessing is a determination to fight injustice. Well, you could argue that some promises have been made. I mean, they wanted SARS, you know, dissolved. That had been done, and then the Inspector General of Police has proposed, you know, a new unit that will take on, you know, the responsibility of fighting crime and the rest of it. But beyond that, I think that what has, you know, kept the young men and young women, you know, on the street is lack of trust in the leadership. There is absolute lack of trust, and that is why we have the youth returning to the streets and insisting that an action plan should be clearly set and timelines set. So we have a situation where, over time, the average Nigerian, indeed citizens, don't think that their leaders mean well all the time. There's this belief that they speak from both sides of the mouth. So there is absolute lack of trust. There is absolute lack of confidence in leadership. And that's why the protesters want concrete steps, action plans, properly laid out and clearly, you know, spelled out in terms of the way these plans are going to be executed.
Right. Well, Solomon.
And I think that, yeah.
Right, Sam Ibemere, apologies there. We are contending with getting a clear audio from your end, and of course the situation with network and all that. Apologies for interrupting. That wasn't intentional, but we'll get back to you for more reactions on all that we see going on, talking about this End SARS protest. So Solomon, well, if you look at, you know, further riders now, independent panel now to probe the abuses. The government has, you know, still said that. But if you now compare that with the stance of the protesters saying there have been promises of reform since 2017, and it doesn't appear, looking at the body language of the government, that anything will change yet. So they are not, you know, willing to budge.
Yeah, Sam talked about the lack of trust. This is beyond promises. It's certain. What the young people are demanding for is that Nigeria, the government and the Nigerian state should go beyond just making promises.
All right. Let me put you on hold. Let's quickly get our first caller now to air his view. Kayode, good evening. Thank you for joining in from Abuja, from Akure. Hello, Kayode. I guess we lost a connection with him. Our apologies.
Hello,
We didn't mean
good evening.
to.
I can hear you.
You're welcome. Please carry on.
Okay. Well, we must commend our youth for putting up resistance against SARS. And they have really done well. But then whatever agitation we make, we must have the good of the country at heart. Given the level to which the president, the Senate president, the governors had made efforts to make sure that EU raised by young people one will also expect a corresponding response from the protesters, at least to give a little allowance for the government to make good their promises, and also to find a common ground where we can all sit down together and iron this out. If we run Nigeria aground, all of us will suffer. And to my mind, it does not want any good for us to destroy the fragile economy. If you hold down the country for too long, we are going to create more problems.
All right, Kayode, thank you so much for your contributions on Journalist Hangout. So how do you weigh what you were about to say, Solomon, with what Kayode, just expressed? And yes, we have, experienced some form of the impact of this lingering protest. Many people are having to walk long distances as against the norm. And even today in court, some high-profile criminal cases didn't hold. The prison officials said they were not willing to, risk being hijacked by the protesters. So it just gives you a sense on, how this is even spilling out into other areas.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what the protesters want to achieve. As part of the effects of pressuring government and public officials to yield to their demand, then they have to create an effect they have to create something that affects everybody. You are not able to go to work. The big companies then will have to either intervene or make all the calls. You are not able to. All they just want to do is stop things from working so that government would listen. The reason why ASU will go on strike is to stop academic work as well, because government is not yielding. The reason why labor union will call a work to rule is so that government will yield when nothing is moving. That is the essence of protest, and that is the essence of mass action. But I must put this in context as well, that over the years, we are in the age of mass movements and mass action. It's not in the sense of the socialist movement of before, but you have seen that when you had the Arab Spring, it was a movement of young people, dissatisfied with the way the government in the Arab world was running. You've seen what happened in Sudan. You've seen what happened in the US with the Black Lives Matter. You've seen protests all over the place. And it is beyond what government will also want to deploy the forces of coercion to bring down. It might just worsen the matter. So we need to learn how to navigate and handle these things first and foremost. Because one, repeatedly, people have made cries. Repeatedly, there's been so much impunity. And so the youths have taken the gauntlet at this time to say, look, we need to address this now. Now, they feel it is not sufficient that you have promised them or you have disbanded SARS. Okay, so what is the next thing? They are not just going to sit back and then say, okay, they've disbanded SARS, then what do we do? Let's give them time. No. Just like you say during elections, that when you vote, you stay there, you monitor your votes, you follow the paper, you follow the ballot, you follow the counting, you protect your vote. So this is coming back to everybody now, because this is the same thing we've been preaching during elections, that you guard your vote. So what they are doing at this moment is we've taken to the street, we've made our demands. Okay, you've disbanded SARS. Okay, what next are you going to do? Yes, the police have announced SWAT, and then suddenly the protesters are saying, no, we don't want SWAT. It's almost same of same. So they are demanding for real reforms in the police. And I think this is the time we have to look at it, because when you look at the history of the Nigerian police, then you know that we really, really need reforms.
Right.
We really, really need reforms.
Absolutely. And of course, it's also fascinating and interesting that the youth are also clamoring for police reforms, as you said, and well-meaning bodies, well-meaning Nigerians have also, joined this clamor. Let me also talk about the NBA, Sam Ibemere now. The Nigeria Bar has also said, in addition to what next after the disbanding and the replacement of SARS, open up, let's all the SARS units nationwide be audited. There's some very notorious SARS units. Eyes have been put on the one here in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in Kano, says the NBA. Now they want all those who have been unlawfully detained at these units to be released, while those who truly have a case to answer to be prosecuted and handed down the necessary punishment. What do you make of that?
Yeah, you've got it all said, okay? The list of what the protesters are basically asking for, like I said earlier, is justice. So you just don't make promises and say, fine, I mean, we are switching over from SARS to SWAT. The youths, the protesters are asking for action plan, okay? Would we have a commission of inquiry, okay, to address all manner of brutality, killings, unjust killings, that have been visited on the people, okay? Those are the issues. So people want to see timelines. People want to see action plans. Okay? So those are the issues. All right? Those are the issues. So there is absolute need for government to clearly state the concrete steps we want to take with timelines. Okay? There should be deliverables. That is what the protesters are asking for. So it's good that we have the NBA joining this matter. There must be justice for those who have been unjustly treated, for those who have lost family members. So switching over from SARS to SWAT is not going to do any good. Beyond the structures that we're talking about values. Okay? Those who have been deployed, the bad eggs that have been deployed from SARS to other different units, wouldn't they go there and corrupt others? These are the salient questions that the public is asking. Okay? So it's not enough. We want to see, Nigerians indeed want to see action plans, concrete steps laid out, okay, for execution with clear timelines. Once that is done, I'm sure the protesters will leave. But like I said, this entire exercise speaks to the fact that things are never going to remain the same anymore. Nigerians will continue to ask that justice be done. They will continue to demand for good governance. This is the time for government to rebuild confidence in the system. It's a rare opportunity, okay, and that's what the protesters, that is what Nigerians are asking for. Justice, confidence in the leader, transparency, all right? Clear action plans to deal with issues that set us back as a people.
Right, we'll continue our conversations right here on Journalists Hangout as the anti-police protests continue. Please stay with us. We will be right back. Many thanks for staying with us on TVC News. Well, more on Journalists Hangout as we continue to get reactions to the lingering protests out there. And Solomon and Sam Ibemere are still with us. Babajide Kolade Otitoju is also going to join us pretty soon. But then let's, get more reactions from here in the studio, how that this protest might just, change the dynamics of power and politics in Nigeria as it is. What do you think about these opportunities?
I think that this protest presents a rare opportunity for President Muhammadu Buhari, who came into power on the mantra of change. He promised to change how things are done in this country, how governance is carried out, and how the people experience the impact of government and governance generally. Whereas things have been a bit slow in coming, with some people thinking that, it's not been easy for him. He's getting a rare support from the street. If nothing at all, maybe this is an opportunity to change something, which is the police, reform the police. He's getting the support from the people on the street to do this. And so it's a great groundswell for President Muhammadu Buhari to actually take this chance and really make a change with the police.
All right, we'll get back now to getting more feelers from our contributors at this time. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Right, let's bring in Babajide Kolade Otitoju now. Welcome, BKO. You seem to have an experience to share as this protests linger.
Yes, I've been in traffic for almost 5 hours. I didn't expect that the road would be blocked today. But about 20 minutes ago, they sent for a power bike to rescue me out of the gridlock. So I'm here, and I fully support the protest. I've been supporting the protest from the first day. I absolutely no reason to go against people who want a change in the way things are done in their country. There is nowhere in the world where police barbarism and brutalities are tolerated, and by God's grace, in my country, we'll be able to put all that behind us, and that's what the protests are about. If we can achieve it, I'll be fine.
But what do you make of people who say, okay, the government has given in on at least 2 occasions, why can't the youth at least relent and allow for more discussions and find common ground, looking at the impact on the economy, impact on Nigerians who are caught up in all of this? How do you react to voices like that?
Well, the first time when the IG made that pronouncement that SARS had been banned, the people chose to behave like it never happened. Why? Because they are used to the IG promising that SARS had been banned, whereas it never happened in the recess, promising reform that didn't take place. So they wanted the president to speak. They had to wait for the president to speak. So the president eventually spoke on the matter, and ultimately we made progress. After that, then their 5 points demand came out, which they sent Governor Sanwo-Olu to deliver to the president. So at every point when we experience delay, they are trying to get a message across to government. The third issue was the issue of their demands, which the government took on board yesterday. So then, of course, they want the policemen who shot at a protester in Surulere brought to book. That's, as far as I'm concerned, the last demand that they are making. And of course, even the reform of the transfer of SARS elements to other units within the police, they have said that they want an independent body to be involved.
Absolutely.
You are not simply going to push people from SARS to somewhere else where they can continue their aberrant behavior. No, they are saying the people, SARS members, SARS guys who are members of the defunct SARS must have some form of mental examination, must go through some mental and psychological examination before they can be moved on to other units. So it's part of the demands. What are the steps that we are taking now to ensure that those demands are met? They want compensation paid to families of victims of SARS. What steps have we made? You see, people have grown familiar with government making promises that they don't fulfill. So that's why they want to be sure that, okay, concrete steps have been taken to address all of the concerns that they have raised. And I'm sure that the more government addresses those concerns, the more the young people will see the need to stop protesting. In Hong Kong, they protested for 1 year, 6 months, and only 2 persons died. How many days have we seen protests in Nigeria? We're already killing people like ours. So just 2 persons died in Hong Kong, 1 year, 6 months. And what is going on now is similar to what is going on in Hong Kong. No central authority. The protesters do not have any central authority, so it's difficult to reach them. It's difficult to reach them. It's a strategy that the Hong Kong people adopted. I see a lot of the Hong Kong strategy adopted by these fellows. So it's just youths, young people, academics, medical doctors, and other professionals joining in. When the government in Hong Kong decided that it was going to put the bill, that extradition bill, on hold, what did the people do? They said, no, you are not simply going to put it on hold. You must withdraw it entirely. And the protests continued.
They made their own list,
and
their
at
own
the
list
end,
of demands.
Even the council elections that were held, the pro-democracy people won by a huge landslide to show that the protest was popular, because they were the people driving the protest, supporting the protest. So this is what we are seeing. You need to see how they are raising funds. This one is not being sponsored by politicians. If it was sponsored by politicians, you will see people sharing money and all that, and they probably would have been slapping one another. But people are just making donations here and there. And my advice for government is to handle this matter. They've done well. They've handled this matter exceedingly well. I want the government to continue to do that, because what we are seeing is like a completely new culture of resistance that we are seeing in our country. And government will do well to handle things with maturity, with moderation. I've heard people say, oh, why don't they just attack them, deal with them? Didn't the Sudanese president attempts to put down protests by force? What resulted from that? He killed people. But did he keep his throne? The answer is blowing in the wind.
Right. And when you look at, like BKO said, like have been said, Sam, this new power, so to speak, in the hands of the protesters. Solomon has also commented on how this might just bring in a new normal into power and politics in Nigeria. Sam?
Yeah, if you recall, I actually alluded to that earlier when I said something about a real opportunity for us to take another look at governance, and this is really important. I want to this, as it concerns the way government has handled it, and I would, to some extent, that it's quite commendable, especially if you look at the governor of Lagos. He's been very calm in this manner of, agitations. But I still have my concerns. Earlier in the day, I read reports about thugs attacking NSAS protesters in Abuja. And I think that we'll be kidding ourselves to believe that these people are actually thugs. I mean, we know the culture of recruiting people in Abuja. And it could be anyone sponsoring those thugs, these so-called thugs. So I have my concerns. And like they said, I think the government has to, be very careful in the way, it manages this uprising, in quotes. It's really very important. It presents us an opportunity to honestly look at, the way we have managed ourselves, as a people. There is absolute need to build stakeholder mentality across every level. And that's what the citizens are asking for, all right? Let's have a right to make a contribution, to make an input into the way we are governed. If there are cases of injustice, these things should be treated transparently, okay, and with all sense of honesty. That's what citizens are asking for. I talked about lack of trust, when I began my contributions into this program. I think that is very key, all right? These students, if you look at the population of those or the demographics of those who are involved in this demonstration, most of them are students. They are very, very aware of the way government has treated their lecturers. It's been 6 months plus. They are at home. Promises are made, okay? And government is not keeping those promises. They can relate with this thing so very easily. We look at what is happening in the National Assembly, okay? We have probes all over the place. Things are not looking the way they should. it will seem that certain investigations or proofs are being swept under, and you think that these young men are not observing these things. So there is a clear case of lack of confidence in the system. And like I say, you talked about power and politics. There is absolutely for government to look very closely and sincerely at what is happening and begin to understand that things can never remain this way again. There are instances all over the world. We talked about Sudan. We talked about what is happening in Hong Kong. These young persons have a lot of examples to draw from. It's about resistance. They are persisting. They are not just, exhibiting the will. This is about a clear perception of injustice, and people want the wrongs to be right.
Right.
So that is what I think is at play here.
And in addition, to the worrying mention, from Sam Ibemere about, incidents of violence, Segun Awosoya, popular activist, also commented that the protests appear to have been hijacked by opportunists. He called them hustlers controlled by lust. Solomon, so what do you make of this? As Jide said, there doesn't appear to be a central leadership. Many of these youth are, just fueled by their convictions, but yet we are, having the scenarios playing out. How do you think, how do you weigh this in light of the overall demands, of majority of the voters, of the protesters?
Having been an experienced mass action activist myself much earlier, one of the things you come to see in this kind of, mass action, where ones I have led previously as well, I have been involved in previously, is that it's, we call it's a mob action, really. And whereas you have people who have the good intention, who understand exactly why this is happening, there are those others who do not have the entire details, but are just tagging along with the bandwagon effect. Because they are young people as well, there is the exuberance that comes with it. So you have different kinds of people for their own purposes who will join up with this. Now, it's about police brutality, but then it becomes a crest, it becomes the wing on which other people who have other cases, other agenda to push, will, get on a piggyback on it and push it. Now, there are others who also have sinister motives, and then there are those who in power and politics will also bring in some people to try to infiltrate and try to quell this. Now, I'm worried about that if it does happen. Now, it's too early to begin to say that it's been hijacked. Absolutely. Because there is a worldwide trend. There is a worldwide wave of mass action. And it's not going to end here, even if this stops in Nigeria. It's not going to end here. It's a trend that had been building up over the years across the world. It's going to blow all countries of the world. So it's something we need to prepare, to begin to think of how to handle these things. Those who are leading the protest, for the genuine reason for it, would also have to get a bit organized in trying to, handle those other people who might come in for sinister purposes. The truth of the matter is that there would always be other parts, whether in minority or for any other reason, who will also piggyback on this sort of protest. Having said that, I think that protests or mass actions are usually galvanized on values and character. And we've always thought that in Nigeria, we haven't been able to build such values and character that will move people either to a revolution or this sort of mass action. Now, we've seen that we might not need such much value and character to be able to do this. Just an incident or many cases of police brutality is spurring these young people into action. And that's also because a lot of people have forgotten a lot about history. How was the Nigerian police built? What was it built? The Nigerian police force, as it is called, is actually part of the vestiges of colonial era government, colonial times, handed over. It was we versus them and all of that. And then the nationalists inherited this without really changing the makeup of the police to really serve the purpose of the people. And we lost our bearing also in 1966 when from the police department or the police force controlled by the federating unit the military came into force and unified the police and became a federal agency. And these are things we need to really look at, because the police was actually much more effective when the federating units were running them.
These are deep issues, not just scratch the surface that, many of these protesters, don't appear to be comfortable with. But there will be more on Journalists Hangout with us. Please stay with us. Watching TVC News now, Journalists Hangout. Of course, we progress on with our midweek special, which is on the protests that have rocked the country across many states of the Federation. TVC News, Ayoyimika Adeni tells us more.
The Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, is a unit of the Nigerian police, established in 1992 to combat armed robbery and violent crimes like kidnapping. As a child of necessity, SARS used conventional and unconventional methods to carry out its responsibility of ridding Nigeria of violent crimes. Over the years, the unit derailed and became notorious for wanton brutality, harassment, and human rights abuses. Before long, SARS came under fire for cases of extortion, harassment, intimidation, abuse of power, and outright murder. This brought about constant agitations by the citizens for the reform or outright scrapping of the unit. An online movement, the hashtag #EndSARS, began in 2018 to protest against the brutality of the police unit. A week ago, a footage of SARS officers in Lagos pulling two men out of a hotel to the street and shooting one of them went viral on social media. The footage provoked outrage and led many to share stories of brutality by a unit which has become notorious for unduly profiling young people. The hashtag #EndSARS was resurrected, this time leading to mass protests with one goal: the disbandment of SARS. Demonstrations against SARS took place in different cities across the country, such as Lagos, Enugu, Rivers, Oyo, Calabar, the FCT Abuja, and many more. Many eminent Nigerians, especially artists, joined the protests, condemning police brutality and calling for an end to SARS. Other eminent Nigerians, including the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, condemned the shooting in the viral video.
SARS has been disbanded, and that the Commissioner, the Inspector General of Police, has also committed to ensuring not only that is it disbanded, but that whatever takes its place has the full participation of civil society groups and all other stakeholders. So I think what we're seeing is and today, just a few minutes ago, the President also spoke about this and spoke in particular.
President Muhammadu Buhari summoned the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, directing him to scrap SARS and effect some reforms in the police. On Sunday, 11th of October, the Inspector General of Police announced the dissolution of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, across the 36 states of the country and the FCT, with immediate effect. In his statement, the IG stated that officers and men serving in SARS will be redeployed. This did not go down well with the protesters, who believe that has not solved anything. On Monday, the #EndSARS protests raged on across the country, despite the scrapping of the unit. Major roads were blocked, causing intense traffic, as protesters marched to different strategic locations in cities like Lagos and Abuja. President Muhammadu Buhari spoke again on the matter, saying the scrapping of SARS is the first step in his commitment to substantive police reforms.
I would like to use this opportunity to say a word on the recent genuine concerns and agitations by Nigerians about the excessive use of force and, in some cases, extrajudicial killings and wrongful conduct by means of the Nigerian police force. The disbanding of SARS is only the first step in our commitment to extensive police reform in order to ensure that the primary duty of the police and other law enforcement agencies remains the protection of lives and livelihoods of our people. We will also ensure that all those responsible for misconduct or wrongful acts are brought to justice. We also deeply regret the loss of life of the young man in Oyo State during the recent demonstrations. I have directed that the circumstances of his death should be thoroughly investigated. Meanwhile, it is important to recognize that the vast majority of men and women of the police force are hardworking and diligent in performing their duties. The few bad eggs should not be allowed to tarnish the image and reputation of the force.
While the president was speaking, protesters were on the streets in different locations. As the protest rages on across the country, many Nigerians are beginning to wonder what the protesters want, especially when SARS has been scrapped. A miffed governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, saw no reason for the continued protests and banned the Answers campaign in the state. The protesters, using the hashtag SARS must end, defied his order and continued with the street protest in Port Harcourt, the state capital. But several accusations are circling on social media that the police were firing shots at some protesters and arresting some. A video surfaced online of the police beating and arresting two women named Treasure Nduka and Felicia Okpara by the officers of the Area C Division in Lagos. Ademola Ojabodu, popularly known as Ojabi, is seen in a video being dragged on the floor, manhandled by police officers. The police officers at Area C allegedly refused those arrested access to their lawyers. They were eventually released when the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, and the lawmaker representing Surulere constituency, Desmond Elliott, intervened. Some protesters were reportedly killed in Surulere too. These may have further aggravated the protesters, who have not backed down from their protests. Their demands include immediate release of the arrested protesters, justice for the victims of police brutality, and appropriate compensation of their families. They also want an independent body set up to oversee the investigation and prosecution of reports of police misconduct within 10 days. For them, what's needed is a total overhaul of policing in Nigeria. It is not yet clear how this will end, but it is hoped that police brutality comes to an end in Nigeria. Ayoyimika Adeniyi, TVC News, Lagos.
Ayoyimika was walking us through all that happened leading to this point where the youth remain on the streets. But as we have been saying, or as we hinted before going on the break, BKO, there are concerns that though a plus for the youth, the fact that they don't have a particular, central leadership is a plus for them, but could also be used against them, distracting them from the main mission, the main advocacy. So how do they, guard against that?
No, they just must remain focused. They must not resort to violence. So far, they've acquitted themselves very well, and people accusing them of being hijacked, they know in their hearts that they are lying. I've not seen any sign that these fellows have been hijacked, and they've shut out the politicians completely from what is going on. You won't see anybody who is, I support Igbo nation, I support Biafra, I'm for Oduduwa cause. No, just young people focused on how their country can be better and how we can put an end to police brutality. Why should we complain about brutality on the part of the police in the US and then turn our eyes away from police brutality in our country? That's hypocritical, and I'm happy that for the first time the message is being sent across and government is responding appropriately.
Right, and Solomon, indeed, stay focused. Advocates are still, enjoining the youth to stay focused, don't be deterred, don't be distracted.
Yes. One of the things about young people also is this, what we call staying power. They have exuberance, they are strong, they have strength, but the attention span, the focus span, this is something they need to work on for their discipline. Now, but this is the age of the internet-enabled media, and this has been the strength for these people. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of them using all of the internet-enabled media, to spur, to galvanize protesters to this. This is a real opportunity for the Nigerian state to become much more democratic, to uphold the tenets of freedom and liberty, which is what democratic governance is all about.
And the final 30 seconds for you, Sam.
Right, I'd like to stay on the issue of, power and politics. What does this mean for our youth? If we're to believe the figures, over 60 million Nigerians are young, belong to that demographic. What it simply means that they have the power to change their future right there in their hands. Okay, one would like to see how they wield this rare opportunity going, into the future. Rare chance to determine who leads them, in any election. So kudos for what has been done. We would like to see this, level of action, sustained over time. I think it's going to be good and better for our country.
Right, bravo the youth, and bravo to you guests, you contributors on the show, BKO, Solomon and Sam. Many thanks to you for doing justice to this topic, even with despite the time constraints we really had. But yes, there will be more opportunities, more to talk more. That's our 7 for you on Journalist Hangout today. You can join us tomorrow for another episode of the program. You can also watch Journalist Hangout on other platforms showing on the screen and on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. And our feedback channel remains Journalist Hangout at tvcnews.tv. Thanks a lot for watching. I am Kemi Fola Adeyemo. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.